If you're a business owner and you're wondering how do you actually use AI in this day and age to build real systems within your business that generate revenue, in this video, I'm going to be building out an extremely powerful AI meta ad system that's essentially going to automate the entire ad creation process. What we're essentially going to be doing is we're going to be taking detailed information about your company, your company's offer, the industry that you're in. We're then going to use AI to conduct in-depth research into your target market and really defining your ideal customer. Once we have all of that information about your company, its offer, and the actual ideal customer we're looking to target, what we're then going to do is we're going to take that information and we're going to use AI to plug that into proven marketing frameworks that I've personally used to generate thousands of leads. And what that's going to do is that's going to generate an entire high quality ad campaign that you can use in your business today. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to walk you through a high level overview of what a system like this actually looks like. Then we're actually going to be building all these inputs out step by step, and I'm going to show you all the marketing frameworks, all the AI prompts that we use. And finally at the end, I'm going to be running through a live demo where I show you how this system works with 3 different businesses in completely different niches, just so you know that regardless of the niche or the industry that you're in, this is a powerful AI system that you can implement in your business today to actually drive results. So what I'm going to do now is pull up my screen and show you a high level overview of what the system looks like. Now, when we're building out business systems using AI, the quality of our outputs from the AI is always going to be defined by the quality of the inputs that we actually put into the system. So the first thing you want to do here is actually give the AI context into both your business, but also the ICP that we're actually looking to target. So the first step in actually designing this process is to get super clear on your company's offer, your company's ICP, and all of the details that the AI might need to know about the actual industry that you're in. We're then going to be using AI to conduct deep research into the target audience. So when it actually comes to outputting the ads, we can create ads that are highly relevant to your target market and actually resonate with their pain points. The better that we can define these 2 things, the better AI output it's actually going to be. So the second input here, I'm going to go through this in more detail in a second. It's actually defining winning ad frameworks to use. So we can essentially instruct the AI to say, based on this information here, I want you to output your answer using these specific frameworks. So the first thing I've included here is an ad copy framework. So an actual framework for the AI to follow when it's writing out the ad. The second thing I've got here are some proven headline frameworks. So specific frameworks that have worked in the past. We're going to use the company research here and the ICP research, and we're basically going to be plugging it into these frameworks. And then finally, we're going to get the AI to output an ad creative. Now, if you're not 100% familiar with Facebook ads, I've just pulled up an example here. So when I refer to the creative, I'm speaking about the image, the video, the carousel that goes here. The headline is down here, so that's what people see when they first click on the ad. And then the actual copy of the ad is the written text that people read. And we're going to be using AI to generate multiple variants of these. So now that we've conducted detailed research into your company, but also the people you're looking to target, and then we've used very specific frameworks that are actually going to generate high output results, we can then plug that into a series of AI prompts. And what that's essentially going to output for us is we're going to output 3 ad copy variants, we're going to output 3 headline variants, and finally, we're going to output 3 ad creative variants. And what that allows us to do is when we go to create the campaign, we can actually split test different variables and see which one performs the best. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be formatting this into a Google Doc so that when we go into there, we can see the ad creative, we can see the headline, and we can see the body of each ad. And this is basically going to give us an insight into what the ad's actually going to look like. And then when you go about creating new variants or new ads in the future, you can essentially use this doc as a resource. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up my make.com account, which is basically that AI automation software I'm going to be using to build out the system. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a high level flow of what the system actually looks like. And then I'm going to pull up a Google Doc where we're actually going to be building out the individual inputs. So now that I'm in Make, just to show you what the flow looks like, the first step in our process here is going to be some kind of Google form where we're actually going to be inputting detailed information about the company, their offer, and the industry that they operate in. We're then going to be using information generated about their ideal customer profile, and we're going to be plugging that into an AI module, which is essentially going to be researching our target market and giving us valuable insights that we can then later use in the actual ad copy. There's a lot more to this, so I'll get into it in just a second, but essentially once we've generated all these high level insights into what the actual ICP looks like, what we're then going to be doing is we're going to be using an AI module to generate 3 ad copy variants, essentially using the information generated from the form we filled out about the company and its offer, all of the insights generated through AI here, and we're essentially going to be plugging this into a proven marketing framework to output highly effective copy. Once we've created that, we're now going to be using AI to generate 3 headlines. And once again, like I said, we're going to be using proven headlines. So essentially it's just going to be plugging your business into these headlines. And then based on the actual ad copy and headlines that we generate, we're then going to be using AI to generate instructions on the kind of ad creative that would work well with these copy and headlines. So this ad creative module is going to have context around what we've already generated, but we're also going to give it context into the actual market that we're in. So for some industries, long form videos might work better in an ad campaign, whereas in some industries, it might be better to use a before and after picture or a carousel. So now that we've used AI to generate all the content for our ad campaign, what we're then going to do is we're going to plug that into a formatted Google Doc template, and then we're going to format the text in the right way to actually plug it into a Google Doc. Now, this is a very high level overview. I'm going to be walking through these steps one by one, but before I get into those, I just want to take the time to actually define the inputs and show you how we go about building these. So as I mentioned in the first step of the flow here, we're actually going to be using a Google Doc in order to get all of the information about the client's business, what they offer, and the actual products and services. And as you can see here, I've actually used a Google Forms module. So when we submit this form, it's essentially going to trigger our automation and it's going to carry out this entire process. So if I actually pull up the form and show you the kind of questions that I used, the very first section here is just getting basic information around the company details. So we've got the company name, we've got the company location, and we've got the company niche. The second section here is where we actually get into the meat of things. So we're going to be defining the ICP. And the way we're going to be doing this is we're first going to be defining the kind of person that we're actually looking to target. So for example, if you're a marketing agency, your main target audience might be business owners, whereas if you're a construction company, your main target audience might be homeowners. What we're then looking to do is we're looking to define the specific location that they're in, and then from there we want to describe their single desired outcome from working with us. So if you're a marketing agency, that could be more leads, whereas if you're a construction company, their desired outcome from working with you could be a brand new finished home. And then the next question here, we're going to describe their current situation. So what does their situation look like without working with you? So once again, for a marketing agency, that might be a lack of leads in their business, inconsistent lead flow. Whereas for a construction company, their clients might be living in a home that they're not happy with, or they're unable to find the right contractor. And why it's important to define this is because we're going to be using these exact form answers in our subsequent AI modules in order to actually write out the copy. So it's super important we actually take the time to define the current situation and the future situation of our ideal customer profile. And then finally here we have an ICP statement. So that's basically combining all the form questions before this. So if I carry on with my construction example, this might be, we help homeowners in New York go from living in a home that they don't love to building their dream home. And this is the specific variable that we're going to be plugging into our AI researcher module to really give it information about the specific person we're looking to target. So the next section here is information about the company offer. And all this means is essentially what product or service do you provide in order to help your ICP get to their dream outcome. So for someone looking to build their dream home, it might be end-to-end construction services as the actual offer. And then here we have a few questions for the offer feature and benefits. So what are the features of the thing you actually sell, and what are the specific benefits that come with each of those? And a few other questions here. We have, what is your USP that differentiates you from your closest competitors? And this is going to allow us to build ads that help you separate yourself from the competition. And then we have a question here to actually write the call to action offer. So usually on a social media ad, there'll be a part at the end that usually says something like, get your free consultation, get a free quote, book now. And then we have instructions here for the AI on which call to action button to use. So if I show you an example of what that looks like, it's basically just this button here and it tells the customer what to do. And then finally, we have a section on social proof and testimonials. So we can include certain testimonials, certain case studies here that we're actually going to be able to use to leverage in the ad. So all of this information we're going to be using to plug into the AI. So when the AI is actually creating the ad campaign for you, it has all of this context around your business, your offer, the people you've helped, and that way it can produce highly relevant ads that actually strike with your target market. So that's the first step in the process here. So when that form gets filled out, this whole automation is going to trigger. So now that we've defined your company's offer and the actual industry that you're in, the next step in the process is to actually get some context around your ideal customer profile and what that looks like. So we're going to be using AI to plug in the information about your ideal customer profile in order to actually conduct in-depth research. So if I pull up my Google Doc here, I'll show you exactly how we're going to go about doing that. So what we're essentially going to be doing is we're going to be using AI to fill out this 10 smart market questions cheat sheet, which is essentially going to give us the most relevant information about our ICP. And this way, when we're actually using AI to conduct the research, we're only extracting factual information that's true about the industry. So I'll just read through a few of these quickly. So what are the 3 things that keep them awake at night? what are the top 3 daily frustrations, what languages, phrases, or complaints do they naturally use when describing their problems, what are 3 common false beliefs that they have, or potentially bad past experiences. Another important one, what outcome matters the most to them emotionally, not just logically. What are 3 ways they go about solving the problem on their own before going about hiring someone. Is there a built-in way to the way they make decisions? So for example, an engineer might be analytical. What fear stops them from taking action? What solutions are already available in the market to actually help them get their dream outcome? And then finally, with those solutions that are already in the market, what are some objections or potential problems that they have with those? So what we're going to do is essentially we're going to plug all of this into AI using an AI prompt, and then we're going to plug in information about the ICP that we got from the form. And what the AI is going to do is it's going to output a detailed description of our ICP that we can then use in subsequent AI modules in order to actually build out these ad campaigns. So if I go back over to the make.com scenario, I'll just show you quickly what this prompt actually looks like. So for this one, I'm going to be using ChatGPT 5 Mini just because it's a creative task and we're looking for the most high quality outputs. Now for the system prompt here, which essentially tells the model the direction they need to go in and the kind of role that they have, I've just told it that it's an expert niche insight analyst. And for the user prompt, which is essentially what most people are familiar with when you go into any AI platform, is I've just given it some context. So I've said we're building a 10 smart market questions cheat sheet to use as research data for our niche. And then for the actual task that we're going to be giving to the AI, I've just said your task is to fill out the cheat sheet using only widely known evergreen truths about the niche, common patterns, complaints, behaviors, and well understood motivations. So I've included all of these instructions because we don't want the AI to output information about our ideal customer profile that's not true or is made up. So that way, when it goes away and actually conducts this research, we're only getting factual, relevant information. And then finally down here, I've just said using the ICP definition that we actually got from filling out this form, which in order to find this, you literally just go into the values from the form that we generated, and you'll be able to find the actual ICP variable that we filled out. And then I've included a list here of the 10 smart market questions, as I mentioned. So we're essentially going to get the AI to output its answer in this specific format. And in terms of the output format of how we want the AI to actually output its answer, I've just included it in a JSON object here. And all this essentially means is we're going to be able to use the answers that it generates as a dynamic variable in subsequent modules, so that when we actually go about building out the ad copy, the AI actually understands what these variables mean, and we can then plug them into those modules and get it to generate relevant results. So the name of the question here is just in quote marks, and it's the key. And as you can see here, we have an empty bracket, and this is essentially going to be the answer generated by the AI. And then what we can do in later modules is we can plug the whole output of this AI module into those, and it's actually going to be able to use these variables to understand our target market. And lastly, at the end here, I've just included some specific rules. So do not invent statistics, numbers, dates, timelines, etc. Do not reference external sources, studies, or research. Keep every insight generic, qualitative, and universally accepted for this niche. Do not create fake facts, and a few more guidelines here that's actually going to help our AI produce reliable and relevant insights. And then finally here, you want to come down into advanced settings and just make sure this is set to a JSON object and to pass this JSON response, because like I said, we want to be able to use all of these variables, their outputs, in the subsequent modules. Cool, so now we've built out a framework to actually define the company and the industry that you're in. And we've now built out a framework to understand the ideal customer profile and the exact client you're going after. So if I pull up my Google Doc here, I'm going to walk you through the framework step by step. And then going to show you how I go about incorporating those into the AI prompts. Cool, so in terms of the framework we're going to be using for the ad copy, I'm actually going to be using a framework called Closer, which was popularized by Alex Hormozi, and it's one that I've used for my own clients to generate thousands and thousands of leads. Now, there's a bunch of different copywriting frameworks that I'm sure a lot of other people are familiar with. For example, you have AIDA, which essentially stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. But for this example, I'm going to be using the Closer framework because it's a framework that I've used in the past to generate results, and I know that it works across industries. So essentially what this stands for is, the first one is clarify who they are. So we want to call out our ICP and actually identify who we're speaking to in the ad. So for example, this could be something like attention homeowners, or are you a business owner going through X problem? It basically calls out the exact kind of person we're looking to speak to in the ad and grabs their attention. So for example, our clarifier could be business owners who are running ads, then label them with a problem. We can say something like, chances are your cost per lead has dramatically risen within the last couple of months and you're scrambling to generate high quality leads. So the next step is to overview their past pains and the things they've unsuccessfully tried in the past. So for the same example, it could be something like, chances are you've tried to hire a growth marketing agency, chances are you try Google ads, no matter what you do, it just doesn't seem to work. And then S stands for sell them the vacation. So here's what we're doing, here's how our solution actually solves that. And then E stands for explain away their concerns. So with your solution, they're obviously going to have potential objections. So we just want to include a section that actually overcomes those objections and just pre-handles them. And then R stands for reinforce their decision. So we want to include social proof and case studies, but we also want to include a strong call to action that actually gives them incentives to sign up. So this could be something like, we're offering a free consultation, we're offering the next 10 people that come in for a free gym session, something like that. And typically this last section will have some kind of scarcity and urgency. So that's essentially the ad framework that we're going to be using. If I pull up my make.com scenario and I'll show you what the specific prompt looks like. Once again, I'm going to be using ChatGPT 5. So for the system prompt here, I've just got, you're a world-class ad copywriter. So the AI is going to act as if it's a copywriter. And similar system for the actual context here, I've just got, we're creating ad copy variants for a new social media ad campaign for a client. And then for the actual task of what we want the AI to do, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pull this up in my Google Doc because it might be a little bit easier to read. So for the task, we've got, your task is to create 3 winning ad copy variants using a proven winning ad copy framework. What we're going to use is we're going to use all of those form answers that we actually filled out, and we're going to use this as context for what the business actually does. And then we're going to use the output from the previous AI module, which basically conducted deep research into our ICP. And as I mentioned, we're going to use both of those things as the input to actually create the ad copy variants here. And I've just said all of the output should come directly from those 2 things. So here's the closer framework with examples for what each section of the ad copy could actually look like. Now, something important here is I've actually included 2 examples for each section of the ad. This is just to teach the AI and give it context around what that section actually looks like, so that when it goes about producing its own sections, it can produce something similar or something along those lines. So once again, I've got clarify who they are and a few examples here. So you can see, attention homeowners in London, or are you a business owner in New York, for example. Then I've got label them with a problem. So ask them a question. Are you tired of manual data entry processes? Or are you unsure about how to get ahead within the upcoming AI revolution? What we're doing here is we're just labeling the ICP with a problem. And then for overview and past pains, what we're basically going to be doing is we're going to be going over 2 common misconceptions or myths that they might believe and why those things might not be true. So for example, if we're targeting business owners, we might say most business owners think that Facebook ads are still the best way to go about getting clients, but they always end up with unqualified leads. Or if we're targeting homeowners, we might say something like, most people try to manage their own projects but just end up wasting time and resources. And then once we've actually grabbed their attention, we've labeled them with a problem, we've overviewed what they've actually done in the past, here's where we actually position our offer as the solution. And obviously, because we filled out a detailed form about your company's offer, the AI is going to then use this information to fill out this part in the process. So some example word tracks for this could be, that's why we developed an approach that does XYZ, and we actually offer an ABC, or we understand these problems, which is why we do it like XYZ. At company, we're offering ABC. And then finally, we've got explain away concerns. So the great thing about what we do is we don't see this obstacle, or this way you don't have to worry about this problem. And then we've got some case studies. So for example, we helped this person to achieve this result using this specific system. And for a limited time, we're now offering a free design consultation or a free audit for the next 10 people to reach out, for example. And then for the very last line, we've got simply click the call to action button to learn more, or anything along those lines. So that's essentially what our ad framework is going to look like. And then of course, I've outlined specific rules for the AI to follow. So make sure you stick to the ad framework, but don't copy the structure word for word to actually come up with your own solution. Make sure each section actually coherently links to the next. So don't just produce generic sections in each step, make sure they link together. Use solely the output provided, and also some instructions on how to actually structure the language within the ad. So make sure you use a friendly, casual tone of voice. And also don't use EM dashes, which is those long dashes that AIs always use, just so this looks like it was actually written by a human and it's in a conversational tone. And the way we're going to output this is we're going to be using JSON again, just to be able to use these as variables in the next module. So we're going to get it to output 3 variants, and we're going to get it to follow the closer framework exactly. And then I've actually added another prompt underneath this, which basically just uses all the input data. So the questions we actually filled out in the form, and the industry research from the previous AI module. So that's essentially what that looks like. If I come back into here, you see that I filled all of this out, and I've just grabbed the variables from the previous modules and plugged them into here. And once again, we're going to format this as a JSON object and pass that so we can actually use it as variables in the subsequent modules. One thing to note as well is I have just increased the tokens because we're going to be producing quite a big output here. So it's important that your AI doesn't produce an error. Cool. So now that I've covered the ad copy framework that we're going to be using, the next step is to actually go into the ad headlines that we're going to be using as well. So once again, we're going to be using proven, well-known headline frameworks that I've worked in the past. So there's three main frameworks we're going to be using here. The first one is what's known as the Big Promise framework. An example of that could be how ICP are achieving desired outcome without common obstacle. So if I go back to the construction example, it could be how homeowners are building their dream home without expensive material prices. And then we have a curiosity framework. So an example of this could be what most ICP don't know about achieving desired outcome. So if I give you a similar example, what most homeowners don't know about achieving their dream home. So another well-known proven headline framework that we're going to be using here is the problem solution framework. And you see this everywhere if you look online. So a common example of this is, are you tired of being poor? Here's how you actually achieve financial freedom. So those are the proven headline frameworks that we're going to be using for this example. If I pull up the prompt here and just show you how we're going about prompting that. So I've kept the system prompt exactly the same. So it just says you're a world-class ad copywriter. And for the context, we're creating ad headline variants for a new social media ad campaign for a client. Your task is to create 3 headline variants using the proven frameworks below. And you can see here, I've just given it context from the previous form that we filled out. I've given it all of the research we did around the ICP. And here I've just outlined the specific frameworks as I mentioned. And for the rules, I've used pretty similar rules to the previous AI module. And once again, we're going to be outputting it using a JSON format, producing 3 headline variables. So if I head back over to make.com and pull up the prompt here, you can see I've got the system prompt here, I've got the user prompt, and down here again, I'm just pulling the variables from the previous modules. And what that's basically going to do is it's going to output 3 headline variables that use information relevant to our business and using the proven frameworks. Cool. So now that we've used AI to generate the headlines, we've got the ad copy. The next step in the process is to actually use another AI module to generate all the creatives that we're going to be using. So if I run you through the prompt here that we're actually going to be using for AI, for the system prompt, we've got you're a world-class digital marketing strategist. And for the user prompt, we've got here your task is to outline 3 highly effective ad creatives to use within our ad campaigns. Now this is where it's a little bit different to the previous ones, because what we're going to be doing is we're essentially going to be plugging in a few of the variables that we generated on the form. So the company's niche, who the ICP is, and what the offer is. This is just because for the actual creatives, we want the AI to form a hypothesis based on the market and the industry that are in, what are actual creative types that resonate with our market. So for specific markets, there's going to be different formats of creative that actually work the best. For example, in e-commerce, it might be a VSL video, whereas for real estate, it might be a before and after picture or a carousel. So the first thing that AI is going to do is actually going to form a hypothesis on our niche, on what kind of ad creative work the best. And by doing this, it actually forces it to generate relevant results. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it the 3 ad copy variants that we made. And we're also going to give it the 3 headline variants that we made. And what we're essentially going to do now is we're going to get it to suggest 3 unique ad creatives that we can actually use within our campaigns that will drive performance the most and resonate with our target market. So what it's going to do is it's going to output the format. So it's going to tell us whether to use a video, a carousel, or an image. And then it's going to give us specific instructions on what the actual creative should look like. The reason we're getting it to generate instructions rather than actually forcing it to create the images for us is just so we can have the most control over the process and we can actually use these instructions in the future. And then finally, it's going to give us a brief explanation here on why this works. And the way this is actually formatted, once again, we're going to be using it as a JSON object. So first of all, it's actually going to form its niche hypothesis. And then within the ad creative, it's going to give us a format. It's going to give us instructions on how to actually create it. And it's going to tell us why it works. And for this, we're going to generate 3 variables. So creative 1, creative 2, and creative 3. And then finally, we've included some rules here. So how to go about actually making its decision. And then what I've done is I've included another user prompt, which basically plugs in all of the relevant questions from the form we filled out about the company. So the niche, the ICP statement, and the offer. And then I've plugged in all of the ad variants here. So if I show you what that looks like quickly, I'll go into the AI prompt now. So as you can see, I've got the system prompt, I've got the user prompt here, which just fills all that out. And then finally, I've plugged in the answers from the form and the answers from the actual AI modules. So we've generated all the relevant insights about the niche. We've generated all the relevant insights around our ICP. We've then plugged that into our AI modules and we've generated 3 ad copy variants, 3 headline variants, and 3 creative variants. The next step in the process is to format all of this into a Google Doc that we can actually use as a swipe file when we're creating our ads. So I've just created a quick template here, which basically just gives it a title with the client name. And then I've just plugged all of these variables that we generated into this Google Docs template here. So that now what we can then do is we can turn this markdown, which basically means hashtags, which is used as hashtags as titles. We can turn this markdown into a HTML format, which actually allows the Google Docs to recognize the formatting. And then what I'm going to do is I'll plug that into a Google Docs here. I'll just give it a title name and I'll plug all of this HTML in, and I'll just save it to a random drive for now. Cool, so now that I've shown you what a system like this actually looks like, what I'm going to do now is we're going to do a live demo where I'm going to pull up 3 random companies from completely different industries, and I'm going to plug their information into this system and see what it actually outputs. So what I've done just to make this 100 times easier is I've actually sent all of the form questions into ChatGPT, and I've got it to generate example answers for 3 different industries. So the first example we're going to be going over is a construction business, and it's just given us a random construction business here. The second example we're going to be going over is a marketing agency, and the last example we're going to be going over is an accounting firm. So I'm going to be showing you examples from 3 completely different industries, so you can see that something like this would actually work for your business regardless of the type of industry that you're in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and input all of these answers into the form that's actually going to trigger our automation, and I'll cut back to when that's actually completed. Cool, so I've just filled out all of these form questions here just to kind of show you what this means. So for example, we've got an example business called Solid Build Contractors. They're based out of Austin, Texas. Their main people they're after is homeowners in Austin, and we've got the ICP statement here. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to plug all of this information into the form as if we were a construction business, and now I'm going to show you step by step what it actually looks like when we get the outputs from the AI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to submit this, and I'm going to head over back onto our make.com scenario, and if I press just run once, what that'll basically do is that'll trigger the automation. First step in the process here is we're now researching the actual ICP. So if I just go over here into the results, we can see what kind of results that we have. So if we recall for a construction company, the ICP was homeowners. 3 things that keep them awake at night. We have that worry the renovation will blow the budget and they'll be left with unexpected bills, fear the contractor will delay or abandon the project, anxiety about hiring the wrong person, etc, etc. We've got a bunch of insights here that actually tell us all about homeowners and the way they behave. So daily frustrations, we've got poor or slow communication from contractors, confusion over estimates, disruption to daily life, and this is going to give us all the information we need to plug this into the next AI modules to actually produce relevant insights. Cool, now that's gone ahead and finished running, and it's gone ahead and formatted it to a Google Doc. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my Google Drive here where I've actually gone ahead and saved this doc. Cool, so you can see that it's just loaded. So if we go ahead and click into this, let's check out the actual doc that we created. So we can see here Solid Build Contractors meta ad swipe file. So for the first ad variant we actually created here, we've got for the format a short case study video, and it gives us in-depth instructions on how to actually go about creating this and the specific structure. And it's also got an in-depth explanation as to why this actually works within this industry. So short social videos capture attention, and also social proof and numbers increase trust with homeowners. So for the ad headline here, you can see it's generated it within the framework. So how Austin homeowners get renovations on time, on budget, without unreliable contractors. So this is obviously the how to get X result without Y pain. And then for the ad copy, let's go ahead and check if it's actually followed our closer framework. So attention Austin homeowners. Tired of worrying your contractor will disappear, do poor work, or leave costly defects you have to fix later? Too many people assume all contractors are the same, or that the lowest bid is the safe route. That leads to surprise charges, slow work, and projects that drag on forever. So in my opinion, this is already quite a strong start to the ad. And then we've got the solution here. And then here you can see it's used the feature benefit. And then here it's got a section that actually explains where the concerns. So you don't have to gamble on unknown crews or vague bids. We handle permits, schedules, clear contracts, and single point communication, so there are no hidden fees, unclear scopes, or disappearing tradespeople. And you can see how that already overcomes a bunch of objections. And then finally here we've got case studies and testimonials. We renovated a 3,000 square foot home in 90 days and came in 10% under budget. And then we've even got a review here that says Jane D says Solid Build made our renovation stress-free and on schedule. And then finally down here we've got the call to action. So schedule a free consultation today. Click contact us to book your consultation and see how we can finish your renovation on time and within budget. So in my opinion, I would say this is a very high quality ad. If you were to go ahead and run this within the construction industry, chances are you probably outperform your competitors. If you think about it, most people are just posting ads that say, here's our services, come and get it. Now let's take a quick look at the other ad variants just to see what else it suggests. So a carousel ad, which is 4 to 5 cards, gives us some instructions on the specific creative we should use and also tells us why this works. So we have sequential storytelling that actually reduces cognitive load and builds step-by-step proof. And for the ad headline here, we've got what most homeowners don't know about on time, on budget renovations. So you can see this is the curiosity framework. And if we check out the actual ad copy, we got, hey Austin homeowners, who can you actually trust to do this right? Are you sick of getting conflicting estimates, slow answers from trades, and the fear that the project will blow the budget or never finish? So actually calling out and labeling with a problem. Many homeowners think a cheap quote is the safest way to save money, or believe one bad experience meaning all contractors are unreliable. So we're just exposing common myths, and those assumptions usually end in surprise change orders and weeks of disruption. And then once again here we've got the solution, the features and benefits, and also the case studies and testimonials and call to action. And I'll just scroll through this in case you quickly want to pause the video and read this yourself. But all in all, you can see that it's generating us high quality and reliable ad outputs.